What's up, everybody? Maine Fly Guys here. Gonna do another tutorial today. I'm gonna tie a Buford today. I'm going on a muskie trip in June and I am over preparing as usual. So I'm gonna tie a Buford today. It's a really well-known muskie fly and I think that you guys are really gonna enjoy it. Usually some Bufords are on doubles, but Maine muskie aren't as big as other places, so I'm just going to do a single here. This is a 5/0 O'Shaughnessy hook, Mustad, I think. So I start at the back, and I'm just going to put 2 of these saddle feathers in. I'm just going to put 1 on each side. I'm going to leave a little bit of the fluff too, just a little bit. So I'm just going to tie 1 on each side. Buford is just such a great pattern. It's not just for muskie, you know, you can obviously use it for pike and bass or walleye or whatever you're chasing. But it is such a cool fly. It really is. Alright, so once these are in, they're in, that looks pretty good. They're nice and straight. So yeah, so I keep some of this fluff. I'll just clean it up here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add quite a bit of flash. So this is going to be a purple and white and black fly. So first I'm going to start off with just a little bit of this this Creolex. MFC makes this Creolex. It's pretty cool stuff. Very, very wavy. You know, it's got a good wave to it. So I'm just going to start out with a little bit of that, not too much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drape a little bit over the top. Kind of to the side a little bit. I'm going to use my thumb to sort of spread it out, and then I'm just going to wrap over the other section, and I'm also going to flatten that out. So it should be sort of a half moon on the top, kind of just covering the top of those feathers. Now I'm going to keep going with some gold and silver flash. I think it just goes well with the pattern. Not too much. Just something like this, where you get, you know, 7-10 strands, somewhere in there. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna tie it over the top, but I'm gonna leave it a little bit longer than my feathers. So I'm just gonna tie it just one section. I'm not gonna fold anything back. I'm just gonna tie it in on top and make sure it's right in on top. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm kind of gonna work it with my thumb so that it's over the top, in like a half moon on the top, you know, covering kind of all sides. So that's decent. Once it's good, you can lock it in. I'm just gonna trim these down, put them aside for later. Alright, so now we have this sort of little flashy tail, and I'm going to add in one more kind of flash. This is a Flashaboo. It's got a purplish tint, and since that's what our fly, you know, we're going to use purple later on. I like to use a fair amount, and what I'm going to do is tie some over the top, about halfway through, tie it in right on top. Once you're happy with it on top, make sure that it's got an equal distribution. Take the other portion and just fold it down. Fold it down and underneath the hook. So now what you have is you have some purple on top, some purple on bottom. It's kind of encompassing that entire tail. And then I just go ahead and seal it up. So there we go. We have a nice little flashy tail with some purple and some gold, and yeah, it looks pretty good. Since I'm going for muskie, I'm gonna secure this at every chance I get. So I'm just gonna put a little glue here on this end, because as you all know, muskie have quite a few teeth. So now I'm gonna do 2 sections of white, 1 of purple, and then I'm gonna make my head. For the first tie-in, I just kind of want it to lay down. I just want it to lay down along the tail, sort of. So I don't want to do any sort of hollow tie just yet. So what I do is I grab some of the wavier fibers. Here you see the wavier fibers, and take out the rats or the shorter ends. And all I do is I measure it. I like it to go about halfway down my tail. And I'm just going to tie it in as is. Make sure that glue is dry first. And I'm just going to tie it in just like this, and I'm just going to spin it by hand. And that looks about good. So I'm just going to do 1, 2 loose wraps. I'm going to push down with my thumb on top and then pinch the fibers underneath. And then they should be all set. So I'll just wrap back, give it some pressure. So you see they'll flare up a little bit. Nothing, they'll flare up a little bit, which is fine. And then I just come in and we'll just trim this off. Alright, that's not bad. Secure that up. Okay, so there we go. There's our fibers, and they're pretty, you know, you see, just a little start. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a hollow tie here with white. Just make it a little fluffier. Here I'll do the same thing where I grab the tips of the ends here, and then you can pull out all the shorter fibers. If you want to save those, you can. I'm not going to today, but if you want to, you can. So here's my little clump. I have a pencil about clump, and I want it to be about the same length as the tail. I want it to end up as those first deer hair fibers. I want it to end up about the same, but it'll be pitched up a little more like this. So that's a pretty good length. So I'm going to tie it in right there. And again, I just do 2 loose wraps. Some guys are going to want to spin it on the bear hook, and that's fine, you know, whatever floats your boat. But I like doing it this way for this fly. I don't know why, but the push down and pinch, I just find that it gives a more even wrap of the fibers around. It just gives me more control, and I like that. So what I would do, I'm just going to come back here and just clean up these fibers. Just clean these up, and then we'll wrap back. And we'll wrap back and just really secure these in there. Because, like I said, muskie have a lot of teeth. So there we go, we got a nice little section there. We're going to push this back. Here's my little tube. Push it back, and it looks, right here is when you can tell if you did a good job or not. Basically, you can look from the front and say, okay, is there an equal distribution of hair around the hook? So this looks absolutely perfect. So I'm going to hold it back. And there's a straggler there. Alright, so now you just build up a little dam for your hollow tie. And I don't want to push this one down too much, so I'm just going to do a little dam. Alright, we'll check that out. How's that look? Not too bad, pretty good angle there. Good distribution around, good bulk, so pretty good. So I'm going to keep that there, and I am going to super glue it in just so that it has no chance to go anywhere. How does that look? Not too bad. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another purple flash. I'm just going to drape it on top of this hollow tie. Some guys will put in another feather, and I might do that. I'm going to see how this looks first with the purple flash. I use quite a bit. Actually, I'm going to use a little less than that. I'm probably using somewhere like 10 to 15 strands here. And I'm going to do that same thing where I sort of place it on one side. I don't want it to be as long as my tail, but I'm going to place it in on one side, about half the length of the fibers, and then I'm going to trap the other fibers, pulling them back. So we get this kind of overlay on the top, and these ones are just a little longer, so I'm just gonna trim those out a little bit, feather them out a bit. Alright, so you guys can see here we just have this kind of purpley top here, and I think that actually looks great. I don't think so. You can add another feather here. I would probably add in, just to show you guys, I would add in something like a grizzly hackle-fly, where I would just put it in like this, and it actually looks pretty cool when I show it to you on the video, but I'm not going to do it for this one. But you can add in a feather here. That will just give it a little extra swim, a little extra, look, maybe a lateral line-esque. But this is pretty good for me. I like this right now, how it's looking. So I'm not going to do anything. So now I'm going to go and do the purple. Be careful not to crowd your head here, because your Buford head is a bulky head, so you don't want to crowd yourself. This is a beautiful, it's unbelievable, purple bucktail, and you're just going to do another hollow tie. I would start picking fibers from the bottom. They'll flare up a little more, making a little bigger sort of crown there. So again, just pull out those shorter fibers. And I have actually, there we go. Alright, so here's my bucktail, and I'm just going to measure it out. I want it to be a little longer than this last hollow tie. I want it to be just a little longer. So right there is a good spot to tie it in. Wish all my bucktails were as good as this one. Alright, so I do a few loose wraps. I'm just going to push down on it and then pinch it to the bottom. This one will spin a little bit, and that's okay. It should flare up a little bit too. There we go. Let's just do a few more wraps, a few more tight wraps. And that looks very good. I'm just kind of teasing out the fibers here. So I'm going to come back and trim this up as we have before. Do the same thing. And what I do is I use the ridge, the thread of the last tie-in point. So I tie in as far back as that. This way I can just rest my scissors right on it, and I don't have any chance of cutting any material in my previous tie-in point. So I'll come back, clean this up a little bit. If I was tying this, say, for a customer or something, for a person, a friend maybe, I would probably put super glue right here. I probably would do that. But this is for me, so I don't, I'm not as important. So push it back. Again, make sure you check. Like here, I get a little sparse region there, and that should be good. But that's just beautiful. Oh my god. Okay, so we're gonna make sure. See, we get a little. Oops, got trapped down there. There's a nice sort of just actually. So you can adjust your fibers a little bit here. This is an opportunity to do so. And so I pulled them all back. Looks decent. Nice and sparse, but kind of gives a purple shadow. So again, I don't want to crowd my eye, so I'm going to give space here. I don't want this one to fall back, because I want it to be just, again, a little bit higher. And this looks actually pretty good. So I want it to be pretty bulky. And that looks, see how that's a nice bulk all the way around? That's pretty good. So I'm going to keep it just like that. And yeah, that's good. And here I'm just going to toss some glue on it again. So I really don't want these fibers falling out. And once this dries, then we'll be ready for our head. Now again, you can put another flash here if you want, some more flash or another feather, whatever. You can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to. I don't want to put a lot of flash. I don't think that Muskie like flash as much as pike. I think pike are more, you know, flash crazy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in 2 different clumps of black bucktail, and that's going to make my head. It's going to make a cone head. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. You really want to take from the bottom here, because you're gonna want it to flare up, like really flare up. So I take a decent clump for my first one. So here you guys can see I have a decent clump again, but whatever, a pencil, you know, about a pencil. And I'm gonna measure out. I want these fibers to be at least as long as the purple ones. I want them to be at least as long. So that's about good. And then this will flare up, and that will become my head. So this will become my head. So I've measured it out, and that's pretty good. So no hollow tie or anything. You're just gonna put it back. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3 loose wraps, and then I'm just gonna work it around with your finger, and this will spin. This will spin, and that's okay. After it spins though, just make sure you work that hair around. So then I'm going to keep working it around. It's a little sparse on this side, so I'm just gonna bring some over. It's very easy to work around. And how's that look? So it's just shadowing it. It's not really, you don't want it to be a major tie-in point. The black, you don't want it to overwhelm you don't want it to overwhelm the pattern, so you don't want to tie in too much. So there, see, it's really just highlighting it, kind of like an ombre look or something like that. So you don't want to trim any of this. You want to keep that in there. The rest of it, if you see any little things, you can just trim it for now. Actually, that one's a little... Alright, so there we have it. There's our first tying point, and it's pretty good. Looks pretty good. Oh, it's actually really good. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so now I just come in, push these fibers back again. Just get them flared back a little bit. Okay, and just tie them back. Boom. So they sit right back like that. Don't worry if they're not perfectly straight up and down or pushed back hard enough or whatever. So now I'm going to do my final tying point, and I like to use these at the sort of back side of your bucktail. You'll have these shorter fibers, and these fibers really flare up nice and straight. So I like to use these. You don't want to use too much because they are kind of thick, so you don't want to use too much. So what I do is I kind of measure it out and say, okay, here's how far my tips need to go on the bottom, and then there's how far my tips need to go on the top. So I want to cut everything right here. So you're going to cut your tips off, and that will just save you time when you're trimming the head. So now all I do is the same thing as I just did. Just come in, give it a few, 1, 2, maybe 3 loose wraps. You're probably going to need to work this one around yourself. It will still spin, but it's much easier to just work it around yourself. So I think that's actually pretty good. It might spin on you a little bit, but it will flare up a bunch. So that's actually pretty good. I like that. I'm going to move forward, and there's a nice, see, that's a nice bulky head. You're looking for that bulk. That's really what you want, is that sort of bulky look. Alright, so I like this. I like what's going on here. I am going to color my thread with a Sharpie because I want it to match the head. I've been using this white Danville Fly Master waxed in 210. Very strong, very good for spinning deer hair. So now, if I knew where my whip finisher was, right here. So now we can go ahead, you can just make sure you get all these fibers back. You don't want to get any trapped. So when I'm whip finishing, I just kind of hold them back. You might get 1 or 2 trapped, don't worry about it. And so I just give it a 3-4 turn whip finish. Okay, so now we're going to look at the head and see how symmetrical it is. It's obviously not very symmetrical right now, but that's okay. You can use scissors or a razor blade. I would always use scissors, because razor blades, once you cut, that's it. So guys who use razor blades, much respect. So I put the fly in like this. I put it in upside down because you don't want the hair out front to push forward at all. So what you do is you come in with some UV resin. Here I just have some Solarez. This is thick, Solarez thick. And I just put it sort of around the eye. 1, it protects your thread. 2, it keeps the shape of this head. You kind of want it to face backwards a little bit. So what I do is then I'll come in, I'll just make sure we have trapped all these fibers down, and I'll just take my UV lamp, kind of hold it down. and you really, really, really want this to be, see how we have a nice taper now? And it'll fluff out a little bit. It won't stay like this the whole time, but you really, really want to set this hard. So I usually leave them in the sun for a few days. I'll just leave them on my windowsill, and that makes them incredibly hard. One, the thread, you know, they got teeth and they're gonna bite and it might rip it, so that's protection there. And two, you really want this head to stay sort of have a nice taper or cone shape, because it will move through the water much nicer. So there we go, we have a nice cape there. And whatever, I'm gonna put it in the window after anyway. So now I just go back and I look at it, and you are gonna be the decider of how big you want your head to be. I think this one is actually pretty close to how big I want it to be. It's pretty proportional to the fly. Sometimes you can have a smaller head, sometimes you can have a bigger head. But what I do is I'll just go back, being careful not to catch any of these fibers, and I'll just taper it, getting any sort of fibers that aren't supposed to be there, and I'll just kind of taper it a little bit. So every now and then I'll pull this back and I'll see, okay, how is that looking? Not bad. See, these are a little long over here, so we'll just trim those back. You could literally spend your entire life doing this, because it could take forever to get it perfect. But I don't think it matters if it's perfect or not. So I like that. You see it, it's a nice cone-like cylinder. Some guys prefer it to be more up and down. I like it to be a little bit more of a cone. I just think that it pushes more water, slides through the water easier. And I'll show you in a second. Alright, so that's not bad. I'm pretty happy with that. Here's the head. You can see it's a nice little cone there, and pretty thick. I will go through and probably keep sort of chopping away at this to make it, see, I got a little too much on the outside here, so I'll probably chop that little bit off and make it more of a cylinder. But that's it. That's the Buford fly. Great pattern for, you know, muskie, pike. Really some good flash, some good wiggle to it. I really, really like this fly. So thanks for watching. If you get any questions, feel free. Check us out on Instagram at Maine Fly Guys, and have a good one. Thanks.